talking about the DACH market, you're talking about Germany, you're talking about Switzerland, you're talking about Austria, I would say the main thing is that they are very direct and at the same time quite skeptical. There is a big history of firstly data security and these kind of things. I think a couple of years back, if you would open Google Maps and want to do Street View, I think the whole of Germany was just empty. So why am I saying this? It's super important that you build trust with the person you're talking to very quickly, because their first instance is, why are you calling me? And how do you have my numbers? And how do you have my information? Of course I can say, well, the internet exists. You left. We live in a digital time. So if I want to, find stuff out about you, I can try. But that's just, what you have to consider going into the conversation. But once you've kind of bridged that initial skepticism, I would say, it can be, a very, very nice talk. When you're doing sales training, like I with a new job, sometimes come to say, hey, how are you, blah, blah, stuff like that doesn't really fly, at least in my experience in the market. Mainly, German people say, hey, how are you? They have no idea who are you. They're like, man, I don't care. Just tell me where you're calling, get to the point. Just tell me and let's see if it's relevant. And perhaps this very, very small, addition could be, if you are working for the Swiss market, then I guess language can be a big differentiator. So people super nice, super polite. So it can be a great market to enter. Of course, a little bit smaller than the big German brother, I guess, but that's less price sensitivity. But the language does help, whether it's the Swiss dialect, whether it's Italian or French. So there's, again, possibilities for people of lots of different backgrounds to be successful there.
Nice.
Very good question. Firstly, going back to the context, the person will always be wondering why you called them. So you have to, not just randomly spray and pray. Okay, let me try to reach out to people that are within their, tech department or engineering. You have to really find specific prospects who you have to think, okay, that could be relevant, and why could it be relevant for them? To answer those questions and quickly establish the trust that you need. And once you bridge that, I think what you mentioned, then it kind of becomes the opposite. Then it becomes very positive, because they like to get stuff done quickly. So you very, very quickly move to a decision point. Is there a possibility? Can you book some stuff, or is it like, hey, not at the moment for now, and then you don't end up wasting time anymore. And that's I guess what can be very, very successful. And I guess the classic combination between various outreach, but not too spammy. They'll see you come in, they'll register in their brain, and they'll see you, and then you have to wait a little bit. But if you kind of go berserk and attack their company on all fronts, they're like, again, it's back to the security thing. Oh, these guys are coming in a bit hot, so you have to kind of give them time to get acquainted that you're trying to approach them, I would say. But yeah, please, sorry, I interrupted.
No, it's true. Are you using, now with GitLab, but are you using AI to help you on this prospecting?
Yeah, of course. It's about, for me as a BDR, my main focus should be outbound. It shouldn't be doing loads of prospecting and researching all the time. It's very important, but I have to get that done quickly. And we have a strong AI tool on the internal side that gets me the information very quickly, very accurately. So when I start doing my calls, then I know, okay, this person, and why am I calling them, and what should I talk to them about? You have to get that out very quickly. So of course, nice. We use it.
Nice.
Good question. What mistakes do people do? Well, I would say trying to move too quickly. it's a slow, yeah, the I'm not part of the sales cycle as a, well, not the full sales cycle as a BDR. That's more the account executives. But it's, it takes time, it has to get evaluated. It has to, someone has to talk from this association, from this board. It's, when a decision gets made within Germany, that there's lots of, thought behind it, lots of like logical reasoning. And so when something doesn't move forward as quickly as you want it to, then, you shouldn't be disheartened by that. That's just the way it goes. They really like to take their time. But at least you can be sure that once they move forward with something, and it can be you, then they're really set on it. And then you really have someone that's very, very strong and will, support you on the internal side. If I may use an example now, it's holiday season. There's loads of people on vacation, and lots of people going on vacation, and you might want to book that meeting sooner rather than later, so it's still part of your month. But what you're doing is then, pushing your contact into an uncomfortable position. They don't want to be shoved around. They're thinking about the holiday. And so to keep that relationship stronger, you have to say, you know what, in August, don't worry, it's okay. Enjoy your vacation in Italy, and, you talk about it when you're back and stuff. I guess for most salespeople, they have a very, very strong work ethic. And for them, work is super important. But for lots of people, work is just work, and they have a life outside of work. And, well, of course, everyone should have, but it's not that big of a part of, for them. And sometimes, in German culture, you have to understand that, say, let's discuss it when it's relevant for you. And then they'll be more than happy to do it. And they'll be the one driving it forward. And then you have much stronger outcomes. I would say here it's, in my experience, not just, is there a specific thing in the DACH market, but that's just overall, the more you call, the luckier you get. It's about persistence. I don't know how it is in other regions, because let's say, for example, I never called into Benelux, but sometimes German people, they can be harsh, and you can be disheartened by that. Say, that wasn't a great conversation. What do I do next? In general, the ones who are best, they have a very high amount of quantity, but the quality doesn't lack that much, So high amount of quantity, but very high quality at the same time, not trying to, trying to find a decent balance, in between, not going all out on the one thing, sending loads of emails that have zero context to loads of prospects, and they just get bothered by it. Trying to find that nice balance. I would say that works not just in the DACH market, but for a variety of markets. Yeah. What will be your experience? Because, of course, you see lots of sales teams from different regions.
Yeah, and it depends a little bit on the BDR. Some BDRs are a little bit more sniper, and some are spread and pray. I don't think that spread and pray is always the answer. And sniper is also not always the answer, I think a mix of both, you need to have the quantity and you need to have the quality. So sometimes you need to do a little bit of spread, but sometimes you need to be a little bit of sniper. So I see some people that doing the sniper mode, they get very good pipeline and very good numbers. But I also see the opposite, where the person that is just getting more and more and more, also having good numbers. I think quality needs to be always there. Doesn't matter what you do. If you are just less amount of meetings and more pipeline, quality needs to be there. But if you go for the high number of meetings booked, you also have that to have that quality. Because in the end of the day, having meetings just because you want to be paid, that doesn't bring you to the next role, that doesn't bring you the next paycheck, that brings you the immediately paycheck, but that doesn't bring you the future. If you book meetings where the person is a good prospect, you had a good conversation, things are very clear for both parties, and they are ready to have another conversation. It goes and maybe enters on the sales cycle, and maybe is a potential sales in the medium long term. You need to think about every meeting is important for the business, and it could be an asset for a sales cycle. So I'll say that quantity versus quality, I'll say quality is always needed. It doesn't matter what you do.
I think it ties, my answer will tie a little bit into kind of the previous question. Most, usually in tech sales, the initial contact is not going to be the CEO or the CTO. Sometimes you can get lucky and these things can work out, and for smaller companies that works. But in the beginning, you're always going to have you'll always have a technical counterpart, and especially I notice in the DACH region, these are usually people that have spent probably the good chunk of their life becoming very, very strong at this one specific thing, whether it's DevOps, as a large, or something more specific, financial accounting. They really know their stuff, and they're gonna smell 10 miles against the wind if you're just here to to sell them something. And they want to see you a little bit, as like the expert as well. And they'll appreciate if you know a little bit about, okay, what do I actually do on a daily basis? So, that means that you can kind of put yourself in their shoes. What does it look like from their, perspective? If I'm selling to engineers at first, to build them as my, internal champions at that company, I also need to have a little bit of knowledge. Okay, what is their daily, what does it look like for them? I can't come across as a super salesy person. So I really have to understand the product and how is it useful for them. I almost have to be, a little bit of a sales engineer, solution architect, as well, if I really want to be successful, because that means beyond just the initial approach, hey, I can have a nice conversation with someone, that's great. But to have a little bit of a technical conversation, if they throw a couple of curveballs at you, and you're able to answer that immediately puts you on a different level, and that's going to drive you forwards with them much, much quicker. So, whatever you're selling, if you really understand that product and you really understand how it fits into their kind of daily life, that means you can ask better questions. You understand, the problems better. It just kind of feeds back and gets better and better. So apart from, what's the best thing for someone selling into my region? The language, that's kind of a given. That's gonna make you much more successful. It should be trying to get to an eye to eye level with very technical people, because they'll very much respect you for it and not see you as just kind of a salesperson, a commercial person. I would say that's a big differentiator and a very important skill to have.
It is. And even if your product is very complex and if you don't understand everything, try to understand the value proposition and or how you are solving pain points. Because sometimes it could be that you are starting, you don't know the industry so well, you have some difficulties to understand everything about your product, but okay, what's the value proposition of your product? What's really your product is impacting the teams that you are talking with and the teams that you want to sell the product. So I agree. I think if you can know more and if you can be an expert, perfect. But if you are not in that level, just make sure that you understanding, because if someone on the phone asks, okay, tell me more about what you are doing, and if you can't answer that question with a good, not empty answer, because you can't give empty answers, I think you are losing already.
Yeah, 100%. No one is expecting, BDRs to do a basically demo over the phone that's perfect, and oh yeah, now I know the details. It also shouldn't, the conversation shouldn't go into that details. Then you probably should be already in a meeting.
Yeah.
But it's also a bit about thinking, what do you want to do in the future? Do you want to go more into leadership, more into the individual contributor, more into the sales engineer, a solution architect role? Well, those are skills you have to start kind of starting to at least think about building now. And so that's going to come anyway. So you might as well look a little bit more into detail of your solution.